Yo, what's going on, my Veve OGs, my Omi homies, my fellow master collectors, and everybody else on YouTube? It's your bromie, the Gale, back at it again with another Veve Medium article, audiobook video. Let's do it. Okay, so here we are with part 2 of In Real Life Comics versus NFT Comics, brought to you by the Mint Finder. Feel free to follow him on Twitter in the Medium app. But this video is going to be interesting because, I've recently found another project called Hero, and they also have comic book covers. Not the full book, but covers. So I think this article is going to relate to both Veve and Hero NFTs. So I think it's going to be an interesting read. And it's going to be like an audiobook. Not too much to look at, but there are a few images to look at. So, do what you do. But without further ado, let's breeze into it. Real Life Comics versus NFT Comics Part 2, The Power of the Original, by the Mint Finder. Last time we looked at the main differences between printed and digital artworks. This time, we'll look at the key reasons why the original, printed copy of a classic comic book is so valuable, and how those reasons translate to the Veve NFT version of those books. As usual, this article will focus on pure facts to empower you with the knowledge you need to make informed decisions in the Veve app. Furthermore, most of these points will apply primarily to rare classic comic books like Fantastic Four issue number 1 and The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1, as modern comics are still too recent and not scarce enough for this article to make much sense in relation to them. Disclaimer: this article's aim isn't to tell you which investment strategy to adopt, simply to equip you with all the facts you need to make your own decisions. None of these points should be considered as financial advice. As a side note, all floor prices are indicative of the market at the time of writing and are likely to shift post-publication. Number 1. Original books are a time capsule into the past. An important factor many people ignore or even dismiss about original comic books is the nostalgia punch they pack. Last time, we looked at how old printing processes could be powerful reminders of the comic book industry in the 40s and 70s. In many ways, comic books are a time capsule into the past. As you can see from the image above, although the digital version of the page is perhaps more legible and looks cleaner, it does not convey the same vintage feel as that original print does. But that's not all. Most comic books, even the present day, rely on advertisement revenue for funding. I know that everyone is thinking, why would anyone care about a bunch of ads? Let's look at some below before we continue. Notice anything? The 1938, 1985, and 2000-ish ads look nothing alike. For anyone who's ever read a comic book in the 2000s, you probably remember the notorious Got Milk ads. Now, imagine stumbling upon a comic book in 2060 and reliving the memories you had of reading those comics 50 years ago, complete with all the ads that were in it. Although modern digitization, and collected trade editions of comics have completely gotten rid of ads to allow for a more streamlined and focused reading experience, the reality is that those versions of the comics are not identical to the ones original readers will have bought and read. And just in case it wasn't clear enough, when people buy a copy of Marvel Comics issue number 1 or Fantastic Four 1, the book they are buying contains ads as well. Number 2. The supply and scarcity of these NFTs is not the same as it is for real comics. One of the key reasons why classic books like MC1 and FF1 and ASM1 are so valuable in real life is because of how scarce they are. According to Go Collect, here are the currently graded circulating editions of the 3 books. Marvel Comics 1 is 64 graded copies. Fantastic Four 1, 2,651 graded copies. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1, 4,374 graded copies. As you can tell, these numbers are much, much lower than the 60,000 editions currently available for each of these comics in the Veve app. Alternatively, and for whatever it's worth, the 600 edition secret rare variants of these NFT books are much scarcer than the in real life graded supply of Fantastic Four 1 and ASM 1. Furthermore, It's fairly safe to say that the most remaining copies of these books have already been graded at this stage, although there are possibly still some ungraded copies hidden in someone's attic somewhere, which means the in real life supply of these books is unlikely to increase. In contrast, a modern book like Ultimate Fallout 4, First Appearance of Miles Morales, is stated to have 12,598 graded copies, 30% of the Veve supply, and that's without counting all the ungraded copies currently held in the collectors and comic readers' collections. As a matter of fact, Ultimate Fallout 4's floor is currently barely lower than those of Fantastic Four 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 1 in the app. One of the reasons for this is because the book is twice as scarce, with only half of the total editions. The other reasons will be outlined in the next article. The fact that the classic books like Fantastic Four 1 and MC1 have way more editions in Veve than they do in real life should not be neglected, as that is likely to impact their long-term growth potential. As a matter of fact, those comics are currently among those with the highest total supply in the app, 60k editions compared to the usual 30k for most comics. In practical terms, if the app ever comes to a point where 30,000 users want to own a copy of each digital comic NFT in the marketplace, the 30,000 edition comics will be the scarcer ones to acquire. There are, of course, other factors that might ultimately make these high edition books scarcer than others in the long run. For example, NFT stacking, which is the process by which a specific collector buys up multiple copies of the same item. NFT burning is another factor that can change the scarcity dynamics of a collectible, and we will be exploring this in part 3. As it currently stands, however, there are currently much cheaper books than these ones in the app that also have less available supply on the marketplace. Number 3, the digital editions are not identical to their physical counterparts. We've already talked about how the digital comics are remastered compared to their print counterparts, and in some cases, re-inked and recolored, and how advertisements from the original do not make it into the digital edition of a book. But that's not all. On some books, for example, Journey into Mystery number 85 and Fantastic Four Annual number 3, the NFT comic also finds itself lacking in pages. How do we know this? It's very simple. For those who haven't noticed, the Veve data for Journey into Mystery number 85 shows that the NFT only has 13 pages. If that seems low to you, that's because it is. In comparison, the physical version of the book has 36 pages. That's almost 3 times the content. Fantastic Four Annual number 3 is shown to have 24 pages. If you look closer at the cover, you will see that there is a gigantic 72 big pages corner box on the top left corner of the artwork. Again, that's 3 times the content. So what's missing? In the case of Fantastic Four Annual 3, most of the missing content are reprinted stories from previous issues of Fantastic Four. For Journey into Mystery number 85, the missing content appears to be a combination of reprints and unrelated original stories. Why are those pages missing? Probably because when they were originally mastered for digital consumption, back before digital comic subscribers were a thing, Marvel made the choice to cut off any archive or extra material from these books so they could sell them as separate comics on digital comic platforms like Comixology. Does it matter? It's hard to say. But just as we established that collectors buying Journey into Mystery number 85 and Fantastic Four issue number 3 in real life are buying printed books with Ben-Day dots and faded ink and ads, it's important to know that the books in real life collectors are buying are not identical to the NFT ones we have in Veve, since they contain up to 3 times the content. Note, this page count discrepancy isn't the case for all comics in Veve, just a select few. Go Collect is a good place to check the pages numbers if you want to compare the NFT edition to the real one. Number 4. The original material has been reprinted countless times, and yet modern reprints aren't worth a fraction of the original. A lot of Veve collectors look at in real life prices of comics to determine the worth of their NFTs, and while it's interesting to see how much the last copy of Uncanny X-Men 4 has sold for in real life, it's also important to note that the specific issue of the series, and most of the comic NFTs in the Veve app, to be honest, especially the golden, silver, and bronze age ones, has been reprinted many times in collected editions like omnibuses, trade paperbacks, and even a facsimile, aka identical to the original edition. Although these reprinted collections do appreciate in the value after publication due to the rules of scarcity, they are nowhere near the prices of the original issue is being sold for. The NFT comics might be the first digital copies of these books, but they are still copies, as opposed to the originals. Expecting the value of these NFTs to reach 1 million in the future is very optimistic, considering all the other factors outlined in this series. The 2020 facsimile reprint of Ultimate X-Men number 4, Ultimate X-Men number 4, Uncanny X-Men number 4, might actually be a better book to track in terms of value in sales to assess how much its NFT should be worth, considering the fact that it's the identical copy of the original book without actually being the original. For what it's worth, some Marvel facsimile editions are already reselling for up to 15 times the original reprint on the secondary market, and that's just within 2 to 3 years of their release. Number 5, cover art. Finally, cover art plays a part when it comes to NFTs, specifically what it means for the common rarity to have the same cover as the original comic book. We've already looked into it in depth, and the gal has also kindly read the article on YouTube for those who prefer sound over text. What does it mean for collecting in Veve? Although there is a sound logic to looking at the real-world prices of these books to assess their value and popularity, in Veve, as well as their long-term potential, it's important to be aware of the ways in which the NFT versions differ from the original books to make the most informed investment decisions. The aim of this article isn't to tell you that the NFT copies of these books are over or undervalued at their current price points, simply to remind you that the NFTs are still and always will be copies of the originals, and in some cases, non-identical copies, a non-negligible fact to consider when assessing what they should be worth to you. As always, the best strategy is to invest in what you personally believe in, rather than what you speculate will grow in value, to avoid any disappointment from having speculated on the wrong items. In part 1, we looked at how comic art was different between the printed page and the digital screen. In part 2, we explored the factors that make the original, first edition of the printed book so valuable, and why that value may or may not translate to its NFT counterpart. In part 3, we'll be looking at other, more Veve-specific factors that might influence the price of comic book NFTs in the Veve app. For more comic, collectible, and marketplace tips, feel free to follow the Veve Mint Finder on Twitter. You can also DM him, or if you like to pitch a specific topic, comic, or collectible for a future article. And that's the video, my friends. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. And if you learned something or enjoyed the content, feel free to drop a like on the video and consider subscribing for more Veve content like this. So yeah, man, that was an interesting read. Definitely gives you a more grounded perspective of what these NFT comics might be worth in the future. I know we have high expectations and we like to look at the real life prices, but it doesn't always translate apples to apples. You know, there's so many factors to consider, and it's just good to have these things in mind when we're buying these NFTs. Some of us kind of go overboard with high expectations, but time will tell, and so will the market. The market decides, but it's good to think about these things. So once again, that's by the Veve Finder, the Mint Finder on Twitter. And with that being said, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing you hear in this video is financial advice, because I am learning just like you guys, and I'm just your friendly neighborhood genius. Sharing his thoughts and opinions on this awesome app known as Veve. So take everything that you hear with a grain of salt, because things could change. And with that, if you would like to follow me on the Veve app, if you scroll your eyes to the bottom left hand corner, you will notice my Ben Simmons Spider-Man, which I have listed for 1 million gems. If you find him, you can follow me, and I will do my best to follow back. And with that, thank you again for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Until then, peace out and huddle strong, my friends. And be like water, stay liquid. Later.